Hi guys, welcome back to the On the Fly podcast with me and my lovely friend Mardy here. We are back with episode 6 now, I think.
I think you're right.
Where, I've lost all concept of time. I'm pretty sure we're on episode 6 now, and as opposed to last week where it took us 15 minutes to remember to introduce the episode, today we are talking about vodka. I remembered it nice and early this time, so that's good. Vodka as a subject is something that we kind of put off for a few of the first few, on the account that because it's such a neutral spirit, it's really easy to fall into either this is way too simple and easy or this is way too difficult to do anything good with, right?
Exactly.
So we wanted to go with some of the kind of less neutral ones, at least for a while, and spread our wings a little bit. But now, feeling a little bit more confident, we've returned to it and also learned that there's actually a really rich history to vodka, which we'll get back onto. In the meantime, how are you? How's your week been?
I'm doing pretty well. My week's been pretty good. Just my last week of freedom before I start my new job next week. So I'm just trying to get some things done around the house.
Nice.
How about yourself?
Yeah, it's been all right. It's mainly been working, really. Since last time we recorded, I've been trying to get things prepped for moving house, which I'm doing over the next couple of days. So next podcast, this will all be different for the video viewers, audio listeners. Nothing will change. But yeah. Aside from that, just working a lot. I had a pretty busy weekend on the bar. It was, I guess, not like crazy busy in terms of volume, but the percentage of cocktails compared to other drinks this weekend was weirdly high. We always sell a lot of them, but it was like a good chunk higher than it normally is, so it made it feel busier. Because, making 10 pints of Asahi in a row compared to making 10 espresso martinis in a row feels very different on a busy Saturday night. So
it really does.
Drinking wise, not done too much personally. Though we have had a new like special cocktail on at work. So I tasted that, and it's like a special we've got on for like an NBA promotion thing. You can win like a Space Jam t-shirt and stuff, which is cool because I love Space Jam. I unfortunately don't personally like the cocktail because it's made with Aperol, and I don't like Aperol. But it is obviously still a good cocktail, even if I don't like it. Of course. It's like Aperol and mint, and it's churned as opposed to like shaken or anything. It's like a really sort of specific flavor profile that I wouldn't personally associate too much with the NBA, but it looks like it. Not to my tastes, but so that's about the only really new thing I've tasted over the last weekend.
Yeah, it was a holiday weekend here, and I don't like to go out with amateur drinkers, so
nice.
I stayed in and avoided all of that. But
nice, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, well, when you get like the bank holidays and stuff here, everything just gets packed with people wanting to get super drunk. So yeah, I feel you on that. It's although I'm usually working those anyways, so I booked off this week towards the end of August here in Manchester. We have Manchester Pride, which is obviously a pretty busy weekend for the bars and stuff. For NQ specifically, it doesn't change much about how busy we are because most of it goes through the gay village in Manchester because we have like a collection of like 3 or 4 streets that is just called the gay village. Like that is actually what it's called, and obviously they get the busiest of Manchester Pride. They're usually like cordoned off and you have to get tickets and stuff. So the city does get busier in general, but I don't think it will affect our football too much. So I kind of preemptively was like, I'm going to try and book this off. So fingers crossed I get at least one of those days off so I can go enjoy it from the other side of the bars.
Of course.
I don't think we have too many holidays coming up before then, so a little bit of respite for a while. That's a lie. It's not a holiday, but have you? I don't know have you heard of the band Oasis? You know Oasis? I don't know if they made it over to America too much. Listen.
Yes,
Every time I assume Okay, good. Every time I assume, like, I'll talk to anyone, like, I've got a few American friends, and when I speak to them and I'm like, oh, yeah, this popular band that everyone knows, and they're like, who? And I'm like,
No.
oh, they're really British, you don't know them. So I always have a hard time, if it's not direct to, like, the Beatles, being like, oh, are these guys
Who are
known? And
they? Yeah.
yeah, like, even if I think they're super famous, but I guess maybe Oasis are just super famous, so that makes sense. They're doing, like, a
They're
reunion
notable.
tour.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I've seen
Um,
some stuff on
They've
it.
got many shows in Manchester coming up. I mean, they're from Manchester, so the
Oh, I didn't
city
know
is
that.
about to be like packed. We're gonna get rammed for it. Um,
Oof.
so yeah, that's no bank holidays or holidays or anything before Pride, but a
Just
busy week or two
Oasis.
coming up. Yeah, so
Best of
that
luck.
could be interesting. Also, from what I heard the other day, I don't know exactly what is planned for it, but I know there's some sort of stuff going on. But it's Hooch's 30th birthday coming up. I don't know if you know Hooch, the drink. I feel like I've talked about it on here
I
before.
you've talked about how we don't have it over here, but you talked about how much
Mm.
you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
like a like alcoholic lemonade basically.
Yeah.
And they've got like a few different flavors and stuff. And apparently it's their 30th birthday coming up this year, so
Hmm.
maybe some stuff for that as well. So I'll surely have more interesting stories to come soon than just, oh, I tried this one
Excellent.
cocktail and worked, and But yeah, I will say that the cocktail I mentioned does have vodka in it, so maybe it's something I could have brought for the classic recipe today, but
Sure. Yeah.
the very very contemporary classic of being made last week. So maybe a
Got to
little
start
bit too
somewhere.
contemporary perhaps. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so let's roll back onto the topic, vodka. Are you much of a
Vodka.
vodka drinker yourself? That
I love
sigh
a
says
vodka
all I
cocktail.
need to know.
It really does. Like I am too old to drink vodka on like any sort of regular basis. Every once in a
Wait,
while, sure, but I can't have too many, otherwise you just get a hangover. It's rough.
while I think vodka has a real rich history, it doesn't have as much subtlety to it that some of the other spirits we've talked about does.
I agree with
I
that.
think that, not to say that there isn't high quality vodkas and high quality distillation processes within it. I think that vodka, amongst anywhere outside of sort of its origin countries, if you like, is mainly used just to get drunk, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
both in the UK and in America, there is the same kind of stereotype of, oh, can I get a vodka cranberry? And it's like a freshly, like just about of age, going out to get drunk for the first time. That's like the standard go to, and I feel like a good chunk of the popular classic cocktails from vodka have similar connotations. Like if I think about like, maybe not necessarily a dry martini or standard martini, because they, have connotations with exclusively basically old people and James Bond, which is
Right.
wrong, by the way, because that's not actually what James Bond drinks. But whatever, I'll get back to that.
Okay.
The sort of martini variations, if you like, with things like an espresso martini, a porn star martini, like they are party drinks. That's what they're
Yeah.
generally for. Like, and it's not that they're not nice drinks. They are. I love an espresso martini. It's probably my most commonly ordered cocktail because I don't trust enough places to make a nice Sazerac, so I order an espresso martini. But
Oh,
they're drinks you drink to get drunk, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And it's good at
Yeah,
doing that.
no,
Um,
yeah. It's one of those things that's like if you're trying to like when I'm using vodka for something, it's like I've got the drink, I know how I want it to taste, but it doesn't have any alcohol in it. So
yeah,
then I have to just add vodka to make it just
yeah.
we've
It's
proved it now. So
because it has. So at least most of the time, it has a pretty neutral flavor profile.
yeah,
Like it is so well usable in that sense, where like it it just basically alcoholizes other flavors. I don't know if alcoholize is a word, but if it isn't, it should
can be now.
Like it is really, really good at doing that in a way that, like, it's superior at doing that to other spirits, I would say.
I agree.
Like
with that.
other spirits are always going to add notes, and often you want that, and often that's useful. But if you just want to add some alcohol to something that you already have the flavor for, vodka's really good for it. Similarly, doing things like infusions and like
just what I was gonna
stuff
say.
like that, vodka is so good for those, because you can really bring through those flavors in a way that, like, if you're not trying to mix it with the oak flavors of a whiskey or with the spices in spice rum or whatever, then it's really good to just bring those flavors through.
I agree.
And like, I think that, I mean, look, I can't speak for its country of origins too much. Like some of the spirits we've spoken about so far have a lot of history within our own countries, so we have sort of a little bit more of a in touch knowledge of, oh, this is what it's like, this is why it's like that, you know. Whereas I feel like with vodka, obviously we've done our research and, you know, we know things, but like, we're not from Poland or Russia or really any of those kind of countries on like on the vodka belt, as I learned today it's called. Like, you know, so we don't have the sort of original
first-hand
perception of it. Yeah. Maybe at some point in the future we make it our aim to get a guest on here who is from Russia or Poland mainly, and get them to speak a little bit about it. But for now, it's just us two very English and American customers. But yeah, I think that the history on vodka is really interesting in that both Poland and both Poland and Russia lay claim to vodka as like its original creators, and there's not really any definitive answers as to who's right. I was doing some research before this podcast into this, and like, since like the 14th century, both of them have been making at least something they call vodka or something similar to what they make now. Initially more so as like medicines and stuff like that, but they've both been making them since like the 14th century. In fact, the earliest like distilled spirit in written knowledge was from like the 8th or 9th century.
Oh wow!
And originally, like, really interestingly, most of the production of vodka, or what is close to vodka, or what it would have been known as back then, mainly actually came from wine. It was like
really
pretty heavily grape produced or straight up just distilled from wine, which I think, you know, maybe it falls into some stereotypes, but I really like the idea of the Russians finding wine and going, this is good, but we should make it into vodka, you know. Like, I don't it had a lot of medicinal use, and like in early Russian use of it, people would make it at home and they'd flavor it and use it as medicine, which I think is really interesting compared to sort of the way it's viewed now, where almost like flavored vodka is seen as lesser than pure distilled vodka. But I thought that was really cool. And then it was only really like sort of 18th century where it started to become a bit more like what it is now. The Industrial Revolution made a big difference to vodka because of like column distillation and stuff like that being able to be possible, and therefore like making it a lot easier to take vodka and make it in mass. And it only really became popular outside of Russia and Poland, or at least like, I guess, in the sort of more like Western world, if you like, in like towards the end of World War II.
Really?
1941 is the earliest known recipe for a Moscow Mule, and that made it boom in America, which I think is really cool.
It's a cocktail.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when we got it. I think we probably just adapted it from you guys, but that kind of really, really boosted its usage in the US. And yeah, like it had started already in like 18th, 19th century and stuff. During World War One, there was like I don't remember the exact name for it. Russian history is not my forte, but there was a revolution in Russia where a lot of lead distillers fled and went to other countries and took vodka with them, and that's kind of how
Right.
it spread. So
Well, I mean,
the wars have been a
vodka
really
was
big kicker for vodka, it seems.
right, and vodka was banned in Russia in 1918. That Tsar Nicholas II basically was like, sober minds would do Russia better, and that's probably why a lot of them fled because they're like, no, no,
that's
we
that's
need the
so real.
vodka. But it
You should be
obviously didn't
sober, and
last
they
long.
went, "I
But
will leave the country."
yeah,
I get it. I get it.
yeah, no,
Yeah, I think like I don't know. It has a really rich cultural history that I'm, almost a little afraid to speak on too heavily on the fact that I don't have the in-depth knowledge of like Russian and Polish history, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than even
of
I've
course,
said. But like just learning this
definitely.
stuff, I think has really kind of, I guess, recontextualized it a little bit because as with really anything in the cocktail world and anything in the bartending world, really, I think that there's always that kind of like base layer of this is what this thing is, and then it's only once you look into it properly where you're like, oh, that's not at all what it is, like with Hennessy, I always had the idea of, oh, it's in all the rap songs, so people think it's cool, that's why it's drunk, and actually the reason it's in the rap songs is super like, it comes from a real like history of culture. Go listen to episode 5 on brandy if you want to hear more about that.
Yes.
Like just a lot of cocktails and like where they've come from and why they invented, and like the importance of balancing and stuff that isn't really known to casual drinkers, and also doesn't really need to be clear, but it's stuff
No,
that
it's
is
true.
really fascinating if you're into it, if you're interested in it, and I imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are. So you probably agree with me on that. Well, I'm not really sure why you would be listening to a whole podcast dedicated to cocktails and spirits if you weren't interested in them, but if you are, hope you're enjoying the ride. Hope you're enjoying us as background noise, I guess.
I support that.
But yeah, it's something I certainly find really fascinating, and I think that learning more about that, maybe it gives me a little bit more respect for vodka as a drink. Of course, I will still go back to work this weekend and continue to serve it to freshly 18-year-olds who want to get drunk, but what can you do?
Yeah.
But I like the most, I think the most popular brand of vodka here is definitely Smirnoff, like worldwide, just because of,
I think so too.
countrywide. Mainly because of home sales, though. Home sales plays a big part in that. In bars, the most common is Absolute.
Wow. See, here it's hands down, it's Tito's. Do y'all have Tito's?
Yes, in very small batches in
With those
certain places,
awful paper
and
collars.
it is very specifically known as the American vodka. Like it has the connotations of this is an American vodka.
Oh yeah, because like, and then you'll get, because you were just saying like oh yeah, you get the younger people that are like, oh, I want a vodka cranberry. Well, see, here it's devolved to I want a Tito's and vodka.
I've
And
heard
you're like,
that one. Yeah,
but what mixer?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, yeah,
I like
Tito's.
that.
They've really like they did such a good marketing job between like, because they do like they give money to dog charities, which who doesn't like dogs? And the other thing is that they did this huge like blast on their gluten free, which if you have any knowledge of like clear spirits in general, like if they've been distilled and not had a flavor added to them, they're all gluten free, even if they're originally made from wheat and stuff like that. But you have
Yeah.
people that
I
swear
guess
that
technically they're
Tito's is
not
the only
lying that it's
gluten-free one.
gluten free, but labeling it as gluten free when it normally isn't labeled as that is smart
Well, right,
marketing.
yeah,
It's taking
exactly,
advantage of
yeah.
those dumb drinkers. So
Oh yeah, no. So
I like
yeah,
it.
then I think Smirnoff is our number two, and then I think it kind of goes down to there's a lot of other like little brands that are kind of drink at home brands like New Amsterdam and Svedka.
We've got Grey Goose and Ciroc take up a good percentage as well, because they're seen as like premiums.
Ooh,
They
Ciroc
seem
is
to be
really
ones
falling
that
off here, but
sell more as
Grey
the
Goose.
names. Ciroc probably fell off because of its attachment to Diddy, I'd imagine.
I mean, I used to like Ciroc a lot. Now it's hard for me to drink, but
I'll be real. I've never liked Ciroc. I think it's fine. I've always thought it was overrated, personally.
That's fair.
It's a decent vodka. I just think that it and Grey Goose both have the same kind of connotations here. That like, it's almost like the majority of the people that drink them come across as they're drinking it because of its name and because they want to look like they've got money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. I put Belvedere as a brand in there that people do that too. It's a status drink.
Yeah. And Tito's here is exclusively drunk by Americans that are visiting, basically, or by people who are like, "Oh, that's the American one. I'll try it." Like we had it at the hotel I worked at, and it would not sell at all until we got American people staying at the hotel, which was semi-common, and then they would exclusively drink it. So, that was an interesting one. And then Smirnoff is kind of drunk by everyone. Smirnoff has followed a similar kind of pattern in bars nowadays that things like Gordon's have that we've talked about before and such, where
exactly
it's cheap and it's bad. It's seen as that, so it's served in little local pubs, but in most like city centre bars, it's kind of gone out of fashion, and Absolute has become a house vodka in a lot of places. Yeah, which I think is a good change, personally.
I agree with that too. I think that Absolute does a lot of its flavors really well, and of course, like
it does.
I have a soft spot for Absolute because of their partnership with the LGBT.
Oh yeah, community. they've done and really.
It's long standing too. Like they came out in 1981, and they decided that they were going to tap into the LGBT community because.
Out of curiosity, was your using of the words "came out" in 1981 on purpose? Oh.
I mean. I guess, yeah.
Absolute came out. Congrats, babes. Slay.
Right. That's when they started kind of looking into like who are the trendsetters, and they found like the gay community.
Of course.
About like the club scene and all of that, and it worked out really well for them because they had a whole like ad campaign, based on going against the trend. And they started advertising in The Advocate and other gay magazines. And since 1981, they've spent over 31 million US dollars in advertising to the LGBT community.
That's cool.
Including things like they were an early sponsor of RuPaul's Drag Race. They've done a lot of things with GLAAD, and yeah, so and they had an ad campaign in 1992 that had like all these rings that made up the rainbow, and so it was one of those targeted ones that like the gay community knew what was happening in that, but maybe no one else did. And then it's just kind of they've consistently partnered with LGBT charities and different they did a big thing with Tom of Finland as well. And it's, I think, especially like starting in the 80s, when the AIDS crisis was going on, like that's a huge time to be like saying that you kind of stand with this community. Like that's really
nowadays you find a good chunk of brands pushing that kind of thing, especially during Pride Month, but
capitalism,
even outside of that, and like you can kind of tell with a lot of them, it's like, oh, this is like they're profiting off of it, especially when it's only during Pride Month that they do it. Like, that's why they're doing it. Absolute have consistently done it for years without reason and all year long. So I think that as much as Absolute has also fallen victim sometimes to that kind of rainbow capitalism during Pride Month, they also they have a long-standing history of advocating for us anyways. So
they had that rainbow bottle that came out in 2008 for their 30th anniversary of the rainbow flag.
Yeah.
And that was really cool too. And that bottle's shown up a couple other times as well. Like
I've seen that floated about as well. It's I think probably the biggest brand I can think of that has had such, like, at least within like alcohol and bars and stuff, that has had such an attachment to queer communities and the LGBTQ plus community in general. The only other one I can think of that's got really such public recognition for that attachment, but in a very different ways, Bud Light, where it got that kind of
that weird blowback, and then nobody wanted to, like, they managed to piss off both sides of that discussion with their horrible marketing fumble. So like
Yeah,
you see kind of what they've
really quite
done.
impressive. Yeah, impressive in
Yeah,
how
and
terrible
then
it is.
exactly, and then you see how that Absolute has sustained something for
Yeah.
over 40 years.
Hmm.
In like in like at least in the US right now, there's been a huge rollback of people supporting LGBTQ rights, and we've seen like this last Pride, I saw much less rainbow merch places, and a lot of people weren't doing anything at
That's
all,
true.
but Absolutes continue doing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, always will. And I really
Mhm.
like that about them. And also, like, as vodkas go, they're a good vodka. Like, then they're not.
Yeah, it is.
They're maybe not like amazing or incredible, but their flavors are generally pretty consistent.
Hmm.
And their standard vodka is a good quality, like sort of a good middle shelf, a good option for your
Yeah,
house vodka. Like, it
safe
has a lot less of that
safe
kind of
order.
petrol-y burn that comes from bad vodkas, right?
Yeah,
Um, like growing up
yeah.
in a small town in England, um, drinking culture starts very early here, and like even
Hmm.
during high school, from the ages of like 14, you see a lot of people like will start drinking, and a lot of the time, what that comes with is it will be acquiring alcohol through whatever avenues that they can, and then drinking it when they shouldn't be. And a lot of the time, that would be either things like Lambrini, which is like just bad sparkling wine, basically, or it would be vodka, because vodka gets you
Hmm.
drunk the most for the least
Yep.
amount of money, essentially. But
Yep.
because it was about the least amount of money, it would be Smirnoff, or it would be like supermarket owned brands, or it would be like Glen's vodka, which is like a really low end brand here, that like it was always really bad vodka, and often that has like a lasting effect on what people think of vodka. And I think that at the very least in bars, vodka's healing a little bit with taking out those lower end brands, having Absolute as your house, having premiums as the
Hmm.
premiums. Um,
Oh yeah, definitely.
it's definitely making that kind of stuff a lot more palatable. Like,
Yeah, because I mean, like, and I even remember when I was in college, like, because granted, like, the drinking age is 21 here in the U.S. Um, having friends that are like, "Oh, I got this." Kharkov was our like bottom of the barrel brand.
mhm,
They're like, "Oh, I got Kharkov, but if I put it through my Brita water filter, that'll make it taste better." And spoiler alert, it does not, and it just ruins your filter. But I think
mhm.
that's a rite of passage that people are just like, "Oh, that's this. It'll make this cheap vodka better." Yeah,
Yeah. We never attempted to make it better. We just went, it'll get us drunk, it's
of
fine.
course not.
This is what alcohol's meant to taste like. I'm 14, I should know. Like, and then you drink it in the park with your friends and get told off by your mum
Right.
when you get
Yeah.
home smelling of vodka. Like, and then not that everyone does that here, but the culture for drinking here
Sure.
is so heavily like induced in who we are as people that like it is relatively common. Um, so like it also gives you that idea of vodka from an early age of what vodka is, and it's that. And
Yeah.
it can take a lot to get past that. Like, it took me a long time to drink any vodka and not like in a way where I was like, I'm gonna drink this and enjoy it. Um, and like I think the first time I did properly was I had the Zubrovka Bison Grass vodka, and that's really
Okay.
good. It's really good vodka. And it's also one of the oldest known brands that are still running for vodka,
Hmm.
because it's a Polish brand and it's from like the 16th century, I think. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I saw something about that being like a super, super old one. And they
Interesting.
just do it really well. Like that was one of the first times I tried a vodka, and I was like, oh, this is good. This is actually a good spirit, not just something to put in my Coca-Cola to get me drunk. Like, you know? Um, so I think it's really interesting to try good quality vodkas, and I would implore anyone out there who hasn't or has this idea. I'm not saying it won't still burn and it won't still taste like petrol,
Right.
but you know, to try a good quality vodka is different to a Smirnoff or to a, and they do their job. They're fine,
Oh
but
yeah. No.
it's worth trying these other brands, and like especially when it comes to like cocktails and stuff. A lot of vodka cocktails are made with the idea that it's neutral, so it allows those flavors through. But some of them, the quality of the vodka actually really can make a difference even if you've got a lot of those
Oh,
other flavors coming
absolutely.
through, if it's a good quality vodka, you can taste those flavors without it tasting like petrol. One of the bigger ones for that, I think, for me, is the Bloody Mary. I don't like a Bloody Mary anyways. It's not to my
I didn't think you would.
flavors. But it's got a lot of really strong flavors in it where vodka isn't the predominant
Hmm.
flavor. However, if you have a bad vodka or a super punchy vodka, it's gonna kind of almost battle against the already really intense flavors that the Bloody Mary comes with anyways. Whereas if you have a
I
really
agree.
smooth
Yeah.
vodka or a really good vodka, it complements it. And obviously if you're having like a vodka martini, right, or a Vespa martini, like
Yes.
which, going back to my previous point, is actually what James Bond drinks. If you watch the films properly and actually see what he orders and why he asks for it shaken, not stirred, it's because it's a Vespa martini, but whatever. In
Great
drinks
Lord.
like that, where the where the vodka is a real predominant flavor, it's going to make a huge difference whether it's a good vodka. So I think that trying a good vodka is something that any good bartender should do so they understand vodka a bit better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, it is using so many of those classics, and there's probably even some that I've completely forgotten about. Even though I guess the Screwdriver, right, is one of the oldest. The Bug, which is just a vodka orange, really. Like
Yeah. A Cosmo, Cape Cod,
yeah,
like those,
Cosmo, right?
things that
Yeah,
like everyone's drank. A lemon drop, like
yeah, lemon drop.
very.
Um, yeah. But we've still managed to get two recipes today that aren't too
Aren't any of
explosively known,
those?
let's
Yeah.
say, and are still interesting cocktails with vodka as a base.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me what you brought today?
Well, I brought another one of my favorites, the Bloody Caesar, which is Canada's official country cocktail. Um,
Really?
and yeah, it is. That was not too long ago. I think it was like 2008 that they decided that that was going to be a thing. But so a little bit of history on the Caesar. There was a few other iterations that were like using a Bloody Mary and then just like putting clam juice in it. But the official Caesar started in Calgary, and it was in 1969. There was a man named Walter Schell, and he was working at the Calgary Inn, and he came up with this cocktail that was going to be their signature drink for this brand new Italian restaurant. So it was a mix of vodka with clam and tomato juice, Worcestershire sauce, and some other spices, and it was something that was similar to a Bloody Mary, but still had like a lot of really unique flavors to it. Um, and then, according to his grandmother, his Italian uh, ancestry led him to call it a Caesar, but the longer name came from one of his regular customers who was an Englishman who would often remark, he's like, Walter, that's a damn good Bloody Mary, or Bloody Caesar, rather, I'm sorry.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that's how that of course, got
Mm-hmm.
into that a little bit more expansive. Um, but yeah, it's been a very popular drink in Canada and places where a lot of Canadians are. I grew up 3 hours from the Canadian border, and that's prime Caesar country
I
there.
guess would
So like
explain
that's
why
something that
I've not
I drank a lot.
really heard of it.
Yeah,
We don't have a lot of
no,
Canadians here, and I've not seen it on a menu here. So
no.
what's in it? Because I don't really know what it.
So it is, of course, the only spirit in it is vodka,
Mhm.
and then a couple shakes of Worcestershire, um, and then depending on what spices you like, I've always done like kind of a different spice blend. You could just be something as simple as salt and pepper, and then it's Worcestershire, and some people will put hot sauce in there depending on your flavor. I prefer to put horseradish because I really like
Okay.
that. I love horseradish. Um, and then use a celery salt rim and a stick of celery. Um, some people put green olives in there. I also like green olives, so I like the whole snack of the whole thing. Um, but yeah, it's a really great drink, and I wish that more people were familiar with it.
It's
But
kind
I
of
think that a
like
lot of it is the clam
Bloody
is
Mary. It's kind of like a Bloody Mary, but without the
intimidating.
tomato, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
basically.
lot of the additives of that.
Hmm.
It sounds like I would hate it,
Yeah, absolutely.
but that doesn't take away from its quality as a cocktail, because I hate a lot of very good cocktails.
It's
Um,
it's so great with like brunch, and like I prefer to have it with like a little. You have like a little beer back, so you have your cocktail and you chase it with a beer. Um, I think that works pretty well. But yeah,
okay,
it's
interesting. I mean,
I think it's a great one.
it sounds like a good is it an aperitif, right? Like it's good for you, just to kind of
Sure, it's good for
yeah.
hangovers too.
I can imagine, yeah. It's like a meal in a drink.
Hmm.
I like it. I also particularly like hearing you say Worcestershire. I think that's a good.
I was like, oh, I don't want to say that. That almost made me not want to pick it because I'm like,
I
oh,
you know what
this is one of his.
I
It's
would say it
one of those
wasn't
words.
quite correct, but it was certainly less incorrect than I usually hear. So
Oh, see, it's like everyone hears like this, the wash your sister sauce.
yeah, it's so
I'm like,
complicatedly spelled for what it is.
mm-hmm.
It's literally just Worcestershire. That's it. Worcestershire, like it.
Worcestershire.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm saying it with the Yorkshire accent, but I guess like even with the American accent, it's the beginning bit is just wuss. Like think of it like the word wuss or like
Wuss. Yeah,
WUSS, just wuss, and then der
wuss.
sure. That's it.
Sure.
It's like der sure. Right, if you're going with you're actually pronouncing your R's, unlike the Yorkshire accent.
Right.
But like just hearing the different pronunciations for that is always very funny. So any drink with that in, always funny to have on the menu.
Glad to be of service.
Hey, listen, we're here for entertainment, all right?
Right.
But no, it sounds like a good drink, and I can see that it's got like really interesting that it's got a lot of the kind of Canadian culture from it,
Yeah.
which maybe isn't as prominent in a lot of really famous classics, especially vodka classics, right? Like they're basically exclusively they've come from the vodka belt or America.
And I would just say, like, name another Canadian cocktail. Like,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like, well, I mean, I can, but like, that's the main one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
is
that's
Caesar,
fair.
for sure.
That's fair. No, that's really cool. Like I said, I can't see that I would ever like it, but that what would your you've obviously said ingredients recipe wise,
Yeah,
ratios and numbers
that's one
and
of those
stuff.
ones that's kind of up to
It feels
the
like a little bit
drinker.
of a difficult one to quantify because really you can give
Yeah,
the milliliters on the vodka, and then outside of that, it's a lot of just kind of
yeah.
put this in it.
How big is your glass? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably about 60 mLs of vodka, just as a really good pour. And then from there, kind of to taste, I would say probably like, 10 to 15 mLs of Worcestershire. And then from there, just kind of, it depends on what you're adding into it.
Right.
But, the clamato juice that you use is already pretty seasoned, the clam cocktail. So I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have to put too much in if you didn't want to. But that's what I like is the versatility of you can really kind of personalize that drink to how you like it.
Right. I guess like because it's such a personalizable one, if we're going off the basis of you've suggested this and someone's gone, yeah, that's really good. I'm going to try it. Say I'm trying it for the first time, and you're making it for me, and I'm just trusting your judgment on it. What recipe are you putting out there on the account of, not necessarily to your taste or mine, but just this is the most standardized one you can put out that, I can adjust from, if you like.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I would do probably like I said, about 60 mLs of vodka, and then 2 dashes of a hot sauce, like maybe some salt, some pepper, maybe a little bit of celery salt, 4 dashes of Worcestershire, and then just ice, and you top it with the clamato juice. And then that's a drink that you'd roll because you don't want to shake it because of the tomato juice in there, but you do want to get some air in it. So I would roll it a couple times, and then serve it with a celery salt rim, and then probably um, green olive and lime garnish, maybe with celery stick.
Nice. So it's just like a lot of food on top of the
Little snack.
glass
Yeah.
to really put it together. Nice. I like it. Well, I probably wouldn't like it,
What
but I
are you
like it. I
bringing to
like it. I
us?
like
Oh,
it
of course not.
conceptually.
Yeah.
So I've got one that kind of went out of fashion a long time ago, but I think is really
Okay.
interesting, especially in the sense that I've heard its name plenty and I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen it. So that kind
Okay.
of really interests me with it, which is the Harvey Wallbanger.
Of
Um,
course. All right.
a proper old classic, if you will.
Yeah.
Kind of from back in the 1970s. If you like, it's very similar to a screwdriver, but it's basically just bougied up a little bit. It is, of course, vodka, orange juice, Galliano, more particularly with which one, but I'll get back to that. And then just optionally a little bit of sugar and bitters. It's basically a screwdriver, but with a little bit of bougie to it to kind of really, give a bit of extra oomph to it. I will say that it's just like the origins of vodka, has a little bit of contested origins, if you like.
Okay.
The two main stories that I can find on it, basically, as to why it was invented, is Tom Harvey, an old surfer, was his favorite drink was a screwdriver, just with Galliano added to it. And in the late 60s, whilst he was celebrating a surfing competition win and was staggering from bar to bar, banging his surfboard on the walls, and that's where the name came from. But then there's also another story of mid 1960s in Newport Beach, California, where it was a drink made for like house parties and stuff, and one of the guests, Harvey, was found banging his head the next morning, complaining of the hangover it induced, and that's where it came from. I don't know which one's correct. I don't know if either are correct, but I think it's fun that there's more than one story.
Yeah. Lots of lore there.
I think a very different kind of universe to pull from, but there's it reminds me of a quote from the Joker in DC Comics, where he says, if I'm going to have a backstory, I prefer it to be multiple choice. And I think that's a really funny thing to say about yourself, but also really makes it interesting with this. And I think a lot of tiki drinks kind of have that, right? Where like the exact origin isn't known, exact recipes aren't known. I think it adds like a little bit of mystery to the drink. And for something that's actually relatively simple, that mystery really helps it to stand out. But something else that also helps it stand out, at least to me, and kind of a big part of why I chose it, is that if you were to make it today with not much thought, it would be simple and it would be okay. But the reason it went out of fashion is kind of because of the simplicity that we started making things with. First of all, packaged orange juice and fresh orange juice bring a very different flavor profile. Well, not very different, but noticeably different if you drink a lot. And like if you were to squeeze oranges into a glass and then pour a glass of orange juice from a carton and drink them side by side, you'd notice the difference. Because of that, a drink that has such a lot of orange juice in it, like this one does, it brings a different kind of flavor. And I think if you were to squeeze it, you're going to get at least a little bit of the zest from it. You're going to get more of that citrusy freshness, whereas packaged orange juice often is a bit more sweeter, a little bit smoother. And I think in a lot of cases is still the best practical application for it. But in a drink like this, it really changes the flavor profile in terms of it almost kind of dulls it a little bit. So that it's a little bit more of a boring drink, essentially. So I would understand why switching it into the cartons would make it less popular. Similarly, Galliano as a drink, the original style of Galliano was changed in the 1970s to be, because it used to be a 42.3% alcohol and it was changed to 35% in the 70s. And then eventually again in the 90s down to 30%. And the flavor profile was also changed with vanilla predominating. In 2006, Galliano introduced L'Autentico as like essentially a callback to the original flavor. So there's now kind of more than one available. But that sort of 20-30 year transition it went through where it was changing was, making the changes for whatever reasons they needed to, fine. It was making this drink generally less enjoyable. And so that combined with the kind of commercialization of things like orange juice and how much easier that became, the drink just kind of wasn't really hitting the same as it used to, and so became less popular. So even though now L'Autentico is available, and you could technically squeeze fresh oranges, it's not really got the popularity it used to because of that. I think it's a little bit sad for it, really, because it could be something nice to have on menus. But I think that if you were to make it now with, a real proper, like, freshly squeeze the oranges and use the L'Autentico, it would still be really good. But alas, I think I found that really interesting. I thought that the whole Galliano changes was weird. I don't know exactly why they changed it. Maybe that's something for a separate
my
episode.
thought is, like, they were changing so many times, and people were probably still on their first bottle of Galliano.
Yeah,
like that's
true.
I know a couple bars here that when they opened, they bought a bottle of Galliano, and they had all the bar staff sign it, and each person like that gets hired signs it, and it's like it's been there for 10, 15 years, because like
I love that.
I can say pretty confidently I've worked at different bars that have had it, but I don't think I've ever touched that bottle.
Yeah, it's only really used in really specific cocktails. And maybe it's something we come back onto a later date more specifically for Galliano, but I just thought it was really interesting that because of its changes, it essentially killed off the Harvey Wallbanger as a popular drink.
And that's the only Galliano drink that most people can name, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you another one off the top of my head. So
no, I can't either.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Recipe-wise, if I was to kind of pull one together, I'd go 50 ml of vodka, as I usually do, standard UK double. You can go 60 if you want, but I'd go 50. I'd go 70 ml orange juice, or at least as close as possible to it. I'd go freshly squeezed, of course, for that kind of authenticity. With like a sugar syrup and Angostura bitters, they're kind of... You don't really need them to have it as a Harvey Wallbanger, but I think it makes them a little bit better. It just kind of rounds it out a little bit better. Not much though. 5 ml of a 2-to-1 syrup, 2 dashes of Angostura, you're fine. Gives everything it needs. Gives that a little bit extra depth. And then 15 ml of the Galliano L'Autentico as a float. The drink is just like in a highball or a Collins. It's just stirred. You just build it in the glass and stir it, and then float the Galliano on top, and that's it. That's all it needs. It's a super simple one. It doesn't need a garnish. Essentially, the float is the garnish.
Sure.
It's a nice simple one with vodka as its main base. It doesn't need much more.
No.
And it's something like I said, I've not had it because, like you said, Galliano isn't popular and it died off. But I definitely like to. I think that'd be cool. I think it'd be really refreshing, right? A very opposite flavor profile to yours, as usual.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean,
we do love having those contrasts. But yeah, I think a good use of the vodka in a simple way. I like that. However,
not everything has to have 100 ingredients. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. However, simple way is not really the way that we do things.
No, that's true.
Something we're going to consider going into our next section, which is, of course, the wheel. We should probably think of a proper name for this bit, but whatever, we'll get back to that. Maybe when we hit season 2, we can have a bit more production around it. But for now, the wheel is coming, and something that I want us to make sure we pay extra attention to with this bit is, because of the way that vodka is, this has the potential to be the easiest wheel spins of our life, because no matter what we spin on this wheel, we can make it work with vodka, because as you said earlier, it's so often used just to alcoholize things, right? However, we discussed this a little bit before the podcast, and a potential idea for that was to say, okay, let's only use flavored vodkas, but a lot of the time that can take away from the quality of the cocktails they're going. Almost, or it can clash a little bit too much. So what we're going to say, as opposed to limiting ourselves to only flavored vodkas, is we'll try and use a flavored vodka if we can, or at the very least, if we're using a plain vodka, we do what we can to still make it an interesting use of the vodka, because a big part of what we do here On the Fly is that we want to be creative. We want to bring something interesting. We talk about our classics and why they're classics, and they are for a reason. But when we're making stuff up, we want to make something that's really quite interesting. And we often don't go for the cocktail that is replicable everywhere. We go with something that requires a bit of thought and a bit of intrigue. That is actually harder to do with vodka, despite it being an easier spirit to use.
That's
because
true.
it's so easy to use. So we're going to put a little bit of extra thought into making sure we do that with the vodka,
Yes.
while still making sure the vodka is a prominent enough component. If we can do that with the flavored vodka, we will. If that doesn't seem like the right call, we're not going to limit ourselves to that, but we will still make sure it is an effective way of doing it. Whether that, even if that ends up being some kind of infusion, because as we've said, vodka is very easy to infuse. So, shall we get the wheel spin?
We shall. The wheel.
Let me load up the wheel. Is it working? It is indeed. Let's go. All right. So modifiers first of all.
Yep.
For the first spin. So this is just non-alcohol components. Let's give it a spin. See what we get as the first one. I think the wheel has to be broken.
Is the wheel broken? Is it passion fruit?
No,
it
it's
coffee?
not.
Is it?
It was very close to coffee. It's mint.
Mint. Okay.
We have had mint before. Do you want to go with it, or do you want to re-roll it?
Let's re-roll it because.
Let's re-roll it. Yeah. When we get to I keep mentioning season 2 as a kind of elusive thing. We do have kind of a rough idea that we want to split things off into seasons almost to keep a little bit of consistency. But when we're going a little bit further down the line, let's say, we'll allow for some of these that we've already rolled. But when there's 30 plus options on this wheel and we've rolled the same 4 over and over again, I think I'd like to at least
try something else.
Challenge ourselves, right? Okay, so this is one that's like super easy to put into anything, but I think having it has a decent focus along with the vodka makes it really actually quite difficult. Acid solution. So to kind of clear up what that is in case of any confusion, basically, while a lot of cocktails will add their sourness or acidity through like lemon or lime or a similar kind of citrus, acid solution is essentially just us using any combination of acids like malic or tartaric or citric or whatever to introduce that kind of element. In whatever way we do that, whether we add it to another ingredient or just use a couple of drops of a watered down malic acid or just a little bit of citric acid or the powder or whatever to add acidity, any of that's kind of fine. As long as we're using only acids as that bit, that's fine. The reason I think this is a really interesting one is because the way that we usually do this with the wheels is we want them to be kind of a real focus. And I think acid solution is something that's really hard to have as the focus, especially when we're only using vodka. So I actually think this is quite an interesting one. So I'm happy to go with this.
Right.
Okay, so we have vodka and we have acid. So we're going to go with something super, like, quite sour, right? It's going to be a real acidic sour cocktail. If we try and balance it too much, it removes the point of us having this focus. So if we're thinking about our hypothetical drinker at the bar, we need to name her, really, don't we? We need to have a name for this. Excuse me, can I have a drink? We need to. We'll get a name for it. Leave suggestions for the name down in the comments.
Yeah, there you go.
We this hypothetical customer, she's like, "Hi, I want a vodka cocktail. I want to get fucked up." And we go, "Okay, what kind of flavors do you like?" She's like, "I like sour stuff, but I've had so much lemon and lime recently. Can you do it with something else?" And we go, "Okay, you're annoying, but let's do it." What are we going? Do you have any initial thoughts on this?
Well, I really like sour stuff.
Me too.
But so like you think about my initial thought of like what are some other like sour vodka drinks? Like you think of something along the lines of like a lemon drop. So you want to stay away from that because that's already like a thing that exists.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a bad idea to look at things like that where it's a really sour flavor and trying to replicate it with this. Almost like kind of the big craze that happened over the last like sort of 5-10 years or whatever of clarified drinks, where it's essentially just a drink that already exists but making it very slightly different, right? doing something like that could be good. The problem with a lot of sour drinks is they do have a pretty heavy focus on lime or lemon as a flavor, not just as a sourness.
Well, I'm thinking of like the Warhead candy. I don't know if y'all have that or not, but it's like a very, very
No,
sour.
but we have a similar thing called
candy.
toxic waste.
Toxic waste, of course. Of
It
course
comes in a
we
little
do.
toxic waste
And of course,
barrel, and it's
ours
like
war,
super,
of course
super
ours
sour.
war, and then yours is toxic waste.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so something like that you have like that. You could kind of design it around that candy, so you could have like a very. I could see like a very small drinking like a Nick and Nora of like a very, very sour, but then using maybe like another fruit to
so like
highlight a different flavor.
My initial thought, although I don't know if it really does exactly what we want, is something we've talked about in previous episodes and used in previous recipes is acid adjusting juices.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of like an acid, like I think in the white rum episode, the first episode, we used an acid adjusted apple juice to like basically make like a rum appletini kind of vibe, right? So like there's definitely something we could do with that to make it that kind of taking a fruit and acid adjusting it and having that as a core flavor. I think that like I do think it's interesting thinking about like sour candy and using that. What's Sour Patch Kids?
Yeah,
like they're like a really famous. They're not that common over here, but they're famous for being sour sweets, right? Do you think maybe there's something we could do there where we kind of, I guess the problem with those is the whole point of the pack is that there's lots of different flavors in it, right? But they are super sour.
Right. Keep thinking of like, you use an interesting flavor like watermelon or like raspberry or something like that, that you can have that sort of fresh, but then the contrast of like then acid adjusting that so that it also is sour.
Yeah. You essentially kind of take non-citrusy fruits and give them almost a citrusy flavor.
That's
think
the only
that
way
like
I can see getting around being like something that's like lemon or lime when you think of some things that are sour is that if you're acid adjusting something that's generally sweet, that could kind of be an interesting like juxtaposition of flavors.
And like as opposed to previously where we've looked at like foods as inspiration, when it comes to sour foods, often it's a different kind of sour. It's almost like a vinegary kind of sour, and you're not going to get that with acid, right? It's really kind of hard to get any similarities from other things. So like even like a lot of sourness in foods comes from like fermentation.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking about like sauerkraut, right?
Sauerkraut, which is like kimchi or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, I guess they are fermented by acids, but it's a more particular kind of acidic flavor that, I mean, to be fair, it does just say acid solution. I'm thinking of a really particular kind of like the citric acid, but it doesn't have to be. It
doesn't have to.
It could go down that route. And you go kind of almost like root vegetable with it and have it as a real like, almost a little bit like your Caesar, where there's a very kind of, it's basically just like liquid food in the sense of its flavors. You go a similar way, but with like a sour kind of thing. It sounds like my worst nightmare, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea to put in a drink. Very different to like a sour sweetie vibe, which I would like much more. I mean, we have a cocktail at NQ actually, called the Lake Springfield, which is Jack Daniel's apple, Midori, and a toxic waste syrup that we make in house. Really, really sour.
Interesting.
So like, without just giving away the recipe for that toxic waste syrup, that kind of thing does work, and it's quite popular. And it's really nice. So like there is definitely
I can see that being popular.
I'm kind of stuck in two minds between, I think, especially when we're thinking about branding and menu capabilities on this, right? We can make any acid adjusted juice work, but how do you turn that into a marketable cocktail is my thought process. It's something we've been through on other cocktails before where like this needs to be a cocktail that we put on the menu and people look at and go, that's really nice. And I think an easy way of doing that usually is going off of brands or things that people already know what it tastes like. So I like the idea of Sour Patch Kids. I also like the idea of like a sauerkraut kind of thing. Or we just go with a really kind of like punchy fruit flavor. But my only worry with that is if we took like, I don't know, cranberry juice and acid adjusted it to be a sour cranberry juice, like a citric cranberry juice, and then put it with vodka. Okay, now what? Or is it just basically like a sour Cosmo? You know, like
No, that's really fair. Yeah.
and I if I think about seeing that on if we don't add those extra, not even necessarily add extra steps, but have something to make it into a cocktail and not just ingredients that we're putting together. If I saw what I just described on a menu, I go, okay. And I'm not saying it needs a capitalist marketing scheme like Sour Patch Kids, but it is a way to do that, right? And I think that, especially if using like an acid solution and stuff, if it's not a twist on another classic, then that has to be considered.
Well, you could really play into that, like, you know, the Sour Patch Kid thing. Like, you could even have like a citric acid rim powder. Like,
that's true.
You know, you can really, I think that if you're, you know, granted, like, you know, what is any cocktail is just a variation of some other cocktail, right? Like, there's probably what, 8 to 10 cocktails, and then they're all just, you know,
that's true.
Swap in and out things. So I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. I think it would just be like, you know, you're like, oh, a sour candy, that sounds interesting. Like, it would be all how you market it, not necessarily what's in it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Away from what we normally do as bartenders, but like, granted, thinking about marketing is something we do have to do as bartenders.
Well, I think that sort of the best way around a really good quality menu, especially when it's something that we're making up stuff like this, is a balance between the two, right? Yes. You can put as many incredible ingredients in the cocktail as you want, but if you're not marketing specifically to other mixologists, they're not going to care if it doesn't sound like a good cocktail, right? Like, if I say to you, oh, I've made this drink with a 6-to-4 ratio of citric acid and malic acid to create this like kind of really sour flavor through that with the vodka, you go, oh, that sounds really cool. If I say that to,
nice.
You know, our hypothetical customer, she's going to go, yeah, what?
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Similarly, if we just go, oh, this is a Sour Patch Kids drink, and they go, oh, cool, and then we just use terrible ingredients in it, it's a bad cocktail.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They'll remember it, but they'll drink it and go, oh, you know?
Oh my God, yeah.
But we want both sides of that to be satisfied. We want to be able to go, hey, look at this cool drink that we've got that has a nice concept behind it, but also look at how we've made it a really good drink. Kind of like what we did last week with the baklava cocktail, right? We took a food item that's well known, something that has some culture behind it, something that's a nice, marketable way to present a drink, but then also use some really cool methods and techniques and ingredients in it to make it work. So the balance on those is really important. I worry going down the lines of the sour candy makes it a little bit difficult because by and large, popular candies are full of shit ingredients. So like, if we actually want to make it taste like those things,
well,
you know, so like,
maybe it's giving Sour Patch, like, you know, not necessarily has to be.
Call it that. It's giving Sour Patch.
It's giving Sour Patch.
Appeal to our Gen Z audience. I don't hate it, you know. It continues the theme of these weird names that we have. I like that. It's giving Sour Patch. And like, I think there's also my only so then with Sour Patch being the most profitable name for that, the problem is the flavors, right? There's a lot of different flavors in a bag of Sour Patch Kids. I was looking like, oh, is there any that like stand out in the way that, like, you know, oh, in M&Ms there's, you know, specific limited edition ones or whatever. From what I can see on Sour Patch Kids, they've done that with several of their flavors and just released individual packs of them. I think the blue raspberry one is probably the most well-known one.
That one and the watermelon one are my two favorites.
So like that, I guess probably one of those would be the best one to go to. But blue raspberry as a flavor in general is conceptually abhorrent, right? So I'd be more inclined to go down the watermelon route.
You know what? I'm going to let you have that. I'm not even going to put up a fight with that. It's like, what is a blue raspberry?
Exactly.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's
On the
delicious,
adverse of
but,
that,
you know.
if we went down like the sauerkraut route, you have this kind of really pungent flavor that a lot of people aren't going to like, but appeals to a really specific demographic.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier to put good quality product into that, but I don't know if it'll make as nice of a cocktail, right? It'll make a cocktail that 1 out of every 10 people will go, that's awesome. The Sour Patch Kids, I feel like at least 4 are going to go, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck. Also, the flavored vodka side of things, with something like sauerkraut, you could go with like the bison grass vodka, right? Those really kind of like grassy, rooty, floral ones that will lend really well into that. I just don't know how you bring the rest of those flavors through without just putting cabbage in your vodka, which sounds horrible.
Well, I mean, think about like you could do like some sort of like martini style where you could infuse your vermouth with sauerkraut. Because I don't think
True.
you'd want to infuse your vodka with it because that would be like too much. I feel like,
True.
and I love sauerkraut, but I feel like that might be too much. But I think if you infused your vermouth, that would be more complimentary if you had an interesting vodka.
I agree. However, I think that works really, really well and in turn negates the need for an acid solution. Because you would just infuse the vermouth with sauerkraut and then you don't need to use the acid solution.
Yep.
Okay, I think based on that small discussion, I think I've gone off of the sauerkraut idea a little bit because I think it could be really good, but would be I don't like it anyways. All right, let's go sour candy. Is there any other than Sour Patch Kids is the most well-known name, right? But
sure.
Famous sour candy. What are the other ones?
I think like
you said Warheads,
like or Zots. Those are
what's the
ones.
flavor of Warheads though? Does it have a flavor? Yeah.
I think that they just have. I think they maybe have different. Like I know that there's like a lemon one. I think that there's probably other flavors too, but it's the main flavor is just sour.
They have different flavors. Yeah. Cool. What flavor is Toxic Waste? That comes in varieties. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll stick with Sour Patch Kids. I think we go watermelon. I think that's the easiest one to make with good quality ingredients while sticking true to its semi-trashy taste.
I think that like you could really get really interesting. Like I think you could make your own like watermelon cordial, like with the process of like making like an agua fresca and then adding sugar to it so that you have like that sweet, because watermelon on its own
isn't sweet, right?
Anytime it's not as sweet as you want it to be.
Yeah,
I guess that's true. If that makes sense.
But you also need to make sure you get quite an intense watermelon flavor through.
Exactly. That's why if you're processing it like you'd process an agua fresca, then you're having that fresh watermelon flavor. But then I think you'd probably want to add some sugar to that and make it into a cordial so that it tasted like someone is expecting a watermelon flavored thing to taste.
For sure.
Right?
I think that so I'm just looking at the watermelon Sour Patch Kids now, and they look like little watermelons, right? They're like red with the green on them and stuff. What the most commonly used thing to give watermelon flavor and things is I get probably Midori, right? Like a watermelon liqueur. But it's a bit more of a different watermelon flavor, and I don't like the idea of using it much. I'd rather get it through the cordial. And also when I'm thinking about color, the Sour Patch Kids and that kind of watermelon, my mind thinks red, not green.
Yeah,
that's another thing that Midori does.
That
bring
color.
Yeah,
from the watermelon.
From fresh watermelon, yeah. So okay, so we make a homemade watermelon cordial. Do we just add the citric acid as a solution in itself? Just do it as like a like maybe add a little bit of the powder, or do it as like a 1-to-1 solution or whatever with the powder and the water, and just kind of add, a couple of dashes or whatever.
You could do that. For me, I kind of like the powder. Like, what if you made the drink and then the garnish was the like citric powder on the top.
Right,
So that
right.
you had, so as you're drinking the drink, you get that sour on the top, but then you get the sweet underneath of the rest of the cocktail.
Okay. Okay. Oh, so it's not actually a sour cocktail. It's
It could be.
it would
It
be
could
like
be.
a
But I'm thinking of like, so when you eat a Sour Patch Kid, like it's sweet on the inside,
Mhm.
right? And it's very, very sour on the outside. So
That's
trying to
true.
replicate that for me would be like putting something citric as like either like a float or, that sprinkly
Okay,
garnish and
so
then kind of being able to
if
drink
we
from
want
it.
to get really crazy with it,
We do.
okay, hear me out on this, right?
Okay.
You make the cocktail with the watermelon cordial and
Mm-hmm.
the vodka.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of all you really need to put in it, right? You just
Sure. Yeah.
put those two in and probably stir it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then however we decide to serve or whatever with the rim. Okay, what if we? I'm trying to think specifically in terms of like there's a couple of different processes you can use essentially to make a salt or a sugar out of something where
Yeah.
essentially you make it into like a crystalline thing with
Mm-hmm.
usually with like dehydration or whatever, and then break it up into like a fine powder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like not even that fine, it can be like still slightly chunky. What if we did that with, because the liquid in the thing will be red, right? What if we did that
Mm-hmm.
with sort of, you start, because it's got to be a liquid mixture to make the crystallized, right? We make a liquid
Yes.
mixture, maybe using a little bit of water just to, or something like that for the base, with
Mm-hmm.
some Midori in it to give a little bit of that watermelon flavor and the green color, and
Ah.
the some kind of probably citric acid,
Yep.
maybe a bit of malic acid as well, like a citric and malic mix. Um,
And then
to
dehydrate that.
and then dehydrate that and turn it into that crystal salt. Because
Yeah.
what you get then is you get the really acidic thing from it, rather than it just being acidic flavor. It's still got some of that watermelon flavor in it on that rim, but also the green color on top of the red drink replicates the way that the Sour
Yeah.
Patch Kids sweets look.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. That would definitely be on your prep list to make that powder, but I think that might be
Yeah,
the way to go.
yeah, like it's a little bit of a lengthy kind of garnish for it, but I think it could be a
Mm-hmm.
really cool way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you serve it in like a Nick and Nora, and it's kind of like a Sour Patch Martini, if you like.
Mm-hmm. A dainty little
In the
yeah.
Nick and the shape of the Nick and Nora is very similar to the kind of like watermelon wedge, right?
Yeah. There we go.
Or a coupette maybe, so it's got more of like kind of like longer,
Sure.
like a little
Just something
mini coupe.
a small glass.
Yeah, yeah, and
Because I
then
can't imagine if the drink was very long to drink it
no, no, no.
like
Well, yeah,
sustained.
because you'd probably be doing like what, just a 1-to-1 ratio of vodka and watermelon cordial.
Yeah, I probably.
And it basically is just like, is there anything else worth adding to that? I fear anything else you would add would just make it taste worse.
I mean, yeah.
You know?
I it feels like I want to add like lime to it, but then when you have like the
But
citric
you've got the
acid on the
sourness from the
outside, then I
top, yeah.
don't. So no, I think that
And also, I guess if you're
where
doing the watermelon as a cordial as opposed to a syrup, it will be sweet, but it'll be less intense than a syrup would be, right?
mm-hmm.
And you're gonna stir
Yeah,
it down anyways. So like,
yeah,
um,
yeah. I think that would be if we were doing maybe a syrup, we'd have to add something else. But I think having the cordial,
yeah.
um,
There is
kind
also a
of solves
watermelon
that problem.
absolute if you wanted to really punch that up, but I feel like it'd
Uh,
probably just
yeah.
be you want to get the main watermelon flavor through the thing
Yeah, I
right
think in
there.
this case we wouldn't need to like we could have the vodka just stand on its own, and
Yeah,
then the the watermelon cordial doing its thing.
yeah. It's a very simple drink in the way it's put together, but if you make a good quality watermelon cordial and a good quality,
It's a lot of prep.
a good quality like, it's a lot of prep, but it's a super easy drink to make.
Oh, of course.
Like
It's
you do
so
you
easy
do
to
all you do
batch.
all of that prep,
Yeah.
and then like you batch, you know, 700 ml vodka and watermelon cordial. It makes you
Mm-hmm.
7 drinks right there. You just pour 100 ml of
Mm-hmm.
it in a stirring glass, stir it down, strain it. Like the
Mm-hmm.
crystal, if you've got the crystal set up already somewhere, you just dip in probably a little bit of gum or whatever to kind of wet the edge,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the crystal It'll stick on the edge. And then, like,
Yeah.
Especially if you go with like a really weak gum, so you're not getting too much of that thick sugary flavor. If you go with like a a really
Just
low ratio gum,
get it stick on there.
Yeah, just like crystal rim, like 100 ml. It's a super easy cocktail to make when you're on it. Takes a lot of prep, but like,
that's okay.
I kind of like that, and I feel like Sour Patch Martini says all it needs. I guess it doesn't specify that it's watermelon, but I think it's more important that it's based on Sour Patch Kids. Right. Hell, you could even have seasonal variants where you just replace the watermelon cordial.
Exactly, like
replace the watermelon cordial and the Midori that's in the crystal with, if you want to go blue raspberry, fine. You make a blue raspberry cordial, right? Where you, I guess, get like a really pungent raspberry flavor and like that blue raspberry syrup or some blue curacao in there or whatever, and you use blue curacao in the crystal to give it the blue color and that.
Yeah.
Maybe you like, because it just uses a watermelon cordial. The point of us making it good quality is we make a good watermelon cordial and not just a syrup. But because of that, you just replace the watermelon in it and make it with something else. You can change the flavor of the whole drink. You leave the vodka as neutral. The vodka is giving it that strong alcohol taste, especially with only a 1-to-1 ratio. But it's also like, it's still got a predominance of the vodka, but it's actually really moldable in terms of flavor. We just make sure we make a good quality watermelon cordial and a good quality kind of acid solution crystal.
Yeah,
I think that could be really fire. I think that sounds
think so too.
Sounds pretty good to me. So we have the Sour Patch Martini as our first one. Let's get the wheel spinning again.
All right.
To add something else. Bearing in mind, this is adding to vodka and acid solution. I haven't turned the wheel on there. It's on the screen. Hold on, it's on there. Yep. Okay, so it wants us to add acid solution.
To the acid solution.
What is, like, have you seen the size of this wheel? There's like...
Theoretically, I have, yes.
There's like 90 things on this. How is
there must be something with the algorithm that it's maybe we broke it by putting too many things on there.
It's on a random wheel website. Like how is? Well, okay. I feel like we have to. So we haven't had this one. It's lime juice.
Lime juice, okay.
Which feels pretty pointless with an acid solution.
I mean, you could acid adjust the lime juice. I mean,
to make it super lime juice.
The super juice lime juice. Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna say a reroll on that. I think we can make it, but I feel like it's pointless. You're basically just gonna make
I feel like
super
it would
lime
just
juice,
end up like a gimlet,
especially when it's with just vodka. Like,
yeah. Spinner again. It's gonna be something awful like coffee.
Okay, no, now we've got something interesting.
Okay.
And I think possibly workable. Dark rum.
Okay. Dark rum. Okay.
So.
Dark rum, vodka.
Now we have to consider vodka and dark rum and an acid solution. So my mind immediately now goes to tiki, right?
Yeah,
tiki drinks are super famous for putting loads and loads of stuff together and making it work. Yep. Especially with aged rums, which I'm sure we'll come back to in a later episode. But if we were to think the tiki vibes, the way that they usually make this work is they go whatever mixture of base spirits they think taste nice together. They go a mixture of some kind of juices that complement them. They go with some kind of citrus and then maybe something weird in there, like a specific kind of bitters or like a falernum or something like that. So that's the kind of build I'm thinking to go with here, right?
I agree with you.
Some kind of original tiki vibe. You go with the dark rum. The problem with putting the vodka in is, again, it does come with that almost connotation of this is just to alcoholize. So maybe this is where we go with a flavored rum.
Flavored vodka? Yeah.
That's what I meant. Sorry, yes. A flavored vodka. Because it will fight with the dark rum a bit, but if we can find one that we think complements it well, in tiki drinks, that's what they're all about,
Well,
right?
and I think maybe giving some space between the vodka and the dark rum, like if you're using the dark rum as like a float, as opposed to trying to like mix it
That's
into the
true.
drink itself, so those
That's true.
flavors aren't competing with each other as much.
That's not a bad shout. Maybe you could then, in the base of the drink, use like a white rum, so that you've still got that kind of tiki vibe and you've got that mixture, but then you use a dark rum float, kind of like in a proper Mai Tai. You have like or in a lot of
Mai Tai, yeah,
like you have like a float on it and whatever, but it has
the
still a mixture of stuff
party
in it.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like maybe it's like a white rum and vodka split base, or potentially some kind of like gold rum and a flavored vodka. Because I want to still have enough prominence on the vodka here, right? I'm trying to think about flavored
gold rum
vodkas.
and a flavored vodka together.
The easy option is vanilla vodka, right? Vanilla goes super well with rum. I mean, spiced rum is in itself essentially vanilla flavored rum, right? Like with its other stuff in it.
And it always ends up really nice with juices too. I like how vanilla vodka and like pineapple.
And we also have to consider that we're then acid adjusting this because we've got to have the acid solution in it. So how do we make? I mean, the acid solution. To be fair, a lot of those tiki drinks just have like 20 ml of lime in to make it work, right? So if we're replacing that with the acid solution, and we just add more actual juice, maybe we acid adjust a juice. Maybe that's what we do here, right?
That would probably be the move there.
Like if we acid adjust like an orange juice or a pineapple juice, they're probably the easiest ones to do in a tiki setting. Put them with, say, a gold rum or a Jamaican rum or... Ooh, okay, this is entirely opposite to what I was just saying in that entire last 20 seconds. But when I was thinking about categories of rum, one that came to mind is rum agricole, which is like quite a like kind of grassy herbal rum, right? Which I think would complement really well, like the kind of bison grass vodka that I mentioned earlier, or that kind of thing, because they both have those kind of grassy notes, right? And then if you kind of take that into account and then balance with that, you could go with something like a pineapple juice, which I feel like and you kind of tiki has kind of two ways it goes a lot of the time. One of them is it goes kind of fiery with it, not necessarily in its flavor, but in the fact that like you imagine its presentation having this kind of like, wow, look at all these cool, warm, fiery, dark sugary flavors. And then the other one is kind of more like I'm really trying to describe this without like in real technical terms because this is a cocktail podcast, but my autism brain is taking over and I'm seeing one of them as nighttime fiery drinks and one of them as daytime rainforest drinks.
Daytime rainforest.
Right.
Okay.
But like, the vibe, like if you imagine being sat in a rainforest and the rain is like dripping through the trees and the kind of smell that comes with that. Almost.
Yeah, I've eaten at a
What's it called?
Sure.
Like petrichor, right? Like the smell of fresh rain. That kind of vibe.
Oh yes.
With the trees, right? If you take that and associate it to an alcohol, it's going to be a bison grass vodka or it's going to be a rum agricole, right?
Yeah.
So if you think Mai Tai but make it grassy almost.
Rainforest.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't even need to acid adjust a juice, I don't think. You could leave this as quite a short drink with the dark rum float. And the dark rum almost
Where does the acid come in?
So the acid just comes in a generic acid solution to kind of power it out, almost, to kind of give it that acidity.
Okay.
And then you give it some sweetness, is what I think. So in the same way that a Mai Tai should never be made with juice, if it's being made correctly, but still has a really good flavour because of how everything else comes together. My thought is you take a rum agricole, you take a bison grass vodka, maybe a falernum, because I feel like, again, that's going to complement those flavours.
I just need a falernum, yep.
Right? You then take the acid solution, you probably stick with citric malic, something like that. And then you take some kind of syrup or some kind of sweetener, where it matches those flavors really well. Orgeat is there, but I feel like it's then too much like a Mai Tai. But I guess we could.
Oh, did you say orgeat? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe coconut. Coconut could go pretty well with those. It's not usually used with those flavors necessarily, but I mean,
Yeah, I don't think that, because you know, I mean, I'm thinking of like the grass flavors as being kind of like fresh, and then you have like the coconut. I would probably want
I
something
just
that's
don't
more of
want
like
to add a I don't want to add a sugar or a sweetener that takes over the flavor. I want
Yeah.
those grassy flavors to really come through, right? Let me have a I think sweet. Let's talk.
I'm trying to think of what goes well with like a grass.
Yeah, it's like
It's a
a
little bit sweet.
So okay, so let's have a look. I'm seeing coconut mentioned. I'm seeing berries. I'm seeing honey, and I'm seeing vanilla.
Oh, honey. Honey, I think
Now
would go really,
berries
really
would be
well.
too much. Honey would go really well.
Yeah.
Vanilla could go really well.
Because I'm imagining like a nice, like a really like floral honey,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And
true.
then
Yeah,
that
if
would
you
bring
go
in
with
their
a
sweetness, and it would complement the grassy flavors too, while giving its own like, you know,
That's true. That's
sort
true.
of.
I guess my only concern with that is that kind of really rainforesty feel that's coming from everything else. Honey doesn't feel like that. And I know that's a small gripe to have with it, but
No, that's
it
true.
doesn't
That's
feel
true.
like with vanilla. Even if we don't go with vanilla as a like, if you think about the what vanilla comes with the connotations of, it comes with like almost a semi-tropical connotation. Honey feels like a garden, right? Like because I guess because of the way it's grown. I'm going really kind of abstract with this one.
Okay.
Like,
no. I'm picking up your vibe though, because like that.
right?
Yeah, you're right, because that
And
honey
like
isn't giving
honey
rainforest.
does
Yeah.
balance really well with those grassy flavors, but I don't think it comes with the same.
Sure.
Okay. So cacao, but not in a chocolate sense. Proper raw cacao doesn't directly taste like chocolate.
Right.
So maybe something like that, or like, yeah, okay. So like I'm because I'm currently looking at fruits and plants that grow in rainforests, right? To try and kind of keep to the vibe. I'm seeing cacao, passion fruit, pineapple, mango, acai, banana. They're the ones that are showing up at the moment. Okay. I think that passion fruit and mango sound like they'd be nice, but maybe a little bit too.
I'm thinking banana.
I don't mind banana. I don't mind acai. Something that's really grown in popularity in like coffee shops and stuff, right? Maybe it's something that we could take into the drinks world. Dragon
there's
fruit.
acai flavored vodka too.
Guava.
Yeah. Well, I know.
I'm never going to be opposed to guava.
Yeah.
I think there's.
Have you recovered from making your own guava syrup though? Is the question.
I made a much better one at home after EBS. So yeah, I learned from my mistakes. Yeah, so there's definitely things to learn there. Okay. Acai really interests me in terms of the marketability side of it, but I don't really know what it tastes like, if I'm being honest. I don't think I've actually had acai.
I'm glad that you said that, because I'm like, I can't name that flavor. Like,
apparently it's purple. What does acai taste like?
It tastes like purple. Cool. All right.
Has a unique taste, a combination of earthy, tart, and slightly bitter notes, with hints of berries and dark chocolate. No, too much like berries. I don't think it'd work. Not for what we want. I think it'd be nice. I don't think it'd work.
But, I mean, technically a banana is a berry.
Yes, okay, but like, all right. So sorry, Dr. Mardy. I don't mind banana, but I don't want it to be overpowering. Is the problem?
No, that's fair.
and I would very much want it to be a good banana flavor and not like a like really artificial banana flavor, right?
I agree. Yeah.
So maybe something with like a really high quality banana flavor to come through like that. I know obviously guava has a very kind of personal connotation with me because I drink a lot of Guava Rockstar, but something that I learned while talking about those like syrups and stuff that I was making is the difference between white guava and pink guava, particularly in the taste. Pink guava was giving that real kind of juiciness that I was looking for, but white guava was very light and refreshing.
Oh, maybe that would be a good.
So
The
perhaps like
white guava would be a
a
good.
white guava like syrup of some kind would pull this together in a way that gives it a real fruity freshness, but isn't overpowering because they're not as strong. And also, it's a
I
super
like that. I like
unique
that.
flavor to use.
It is.
And then I think the dark rum float really kind of stops it from being too light. It kind of like it add a nice extra layer of balance to it, right? It kind of almost like the canopy of trees stopping the rain from getting through. I'm getting a real like vibe
You're
off of this
into
drink.
this.
I'm
Yeah.
really into this. I think that's a really interesting drink at the end of all that.
Yeah, I like that. What are your proportions you thinking?
Well, it's
So where does the acid come in?
the acid is just in like a solution, right? You just use like
Okay.
a
We're just using a couple droppers. Or...
maybe tartaric actually, because tartaric's really good at drawing out the flavors of fruits. I don't know how well it would work with the guava. Tartaric, like I mean, it's a naturally occurring organic acid found in many fruits, most notably grapes. So it's really good as acidifying and emulsifying. I think it could be really good. So maybe okay, so a tartaric acid solution, maybe 4 drops in this.
Okay.
Would really just help punch it up, right? It'd add that stop it being too sweet, add that kind of citrus balance. You have a split base of rum agricole and a bison grass vodka, maybe 30-30, right? I usually go to doubles, but with tiki drinks I don't, because they're not, they're very specific in the way that they're built, and it's usually way too much alcohol, which is good. So like 30 ml agricole, 30 ml bison grass vodka, 10 ml velvet falernum, 4 dashes acid solution, 20 ml of the guava syrup, shake and strain, either crushed ice or cubed ice with a crushed cap.
I like crushed ice for that.
Yeah, so full crushed ice and crushed cap to really kind of layer it off. And then like a 10 ml layer of dark rum over the top. I know that's less than we would usually use on something that is a wheel ingredient, but it still has a lot of prominence in the drink, even at a low amount, because it's getting floated.
And it also has such a strong flavor to it anyways, you don't have to use as much of it for it to pull through.
Yeah, and then I think,
like you said, because it's a float, it will pull through anyway.
And then I think garnish-wise, I want something kind of leafy but not mint. I want something that's a little bit more... It's going to give those kind of same vibes as we were talking about before, right? It probably a plant that we get in quite specifically for it, as opposed to just like grab some mint or rosemary or whatever, If it's going to be on the nose, I want it to be that petrichor kind of vibes, right? Like maybe, I don't know, pandan leaves aren't a bad shout. We use those at work sometimes and they look really pretty on the top of them. Like, I don't really know what they are.
I don't know what that is at all. That's a new word for me.
What else? Okay, aromatic plants in a rainforest. Google's my best friend today. Oh, I don't want any of that.
Oh no.
No. Okay. You know what? Let's just get some leaves on it. All right, let's like some kind of leafy plant. I'm gonna say pandan leaves because they're like relatively odorless, but they're not like.
Okay.
You know how mint has like a really particular kind of aroma to it, and that's the point of it.
Right.
I think this
Yeah.
benefits from not having that as much, and it having almost like. Sometimes people go, "Oh, why is there a leaf in my drink?" And you go, "Oh, because it brings these aromatics." Actually, I want this to smell like a leaf. I want it to be a leaf.
We want a leaf.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think that like a couple of pandan leaves in the top would really pull this together quite nicely.
Sounds great. Yeah.
And I want to say some kind of usage of the guava, but I don't think there's. It's a bit harder to maybe like a slice of guava or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of it's a hard fruit to use as a garnish because of its build, but
it is. Yeah.
Maybe like a wedge, like you would with a passion fruit. You know, maybe you freeze it and do like a frozen wedge.
Yeah, or you could do even like, or you could do something like dehydrated as well.
That's true.
Like a cross section.
That's true. Yeah. So some kind of guava on the top. I think that'd be. Look, it's a little bit more conceptual, I think, than some of the others. Because I feel like it came from a vibe as opposed to a flavor profile, but it uses all of the things we got from the wheels.
And tiki drinks are all vibes. So
yeah, and
I think that fits.
I think it sounds really nice.
But what are we gonna call it?
I think the name's right there in front of us. I think you call it Petrichor.
Okay.
Like, it's a big, like, I was talking about those kind of vibes and that word came up, and it's a really cool, first of all, it's a cool word, right?
It is.
And prompts conversation in terms of like, what does that mean? And you go, oh, it's actually the word that means the smell of rainfall, right? And like,
oh, that sounds like such like a mixologist explanation,
right? So does it not fit exactly what we've done?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah.
I like it. The Petrichor. I tell you what, we've made a lot of cocktails that I've been like, damn, that sounds really nice. That might be my favorite one.
It's a good one.
I think for my flavor of like, for my tastes in particular as well.
Well, guava, yeah.
Yeah. But like even like the really grassy notes. Like I love aroma agricole. I love the bison grass vodka. Mm-hmm. Like I like that really kind of fresh flavor. I think it could be really and also like we've had a couple of others that are like, oh, fresh and summery and refreshing, but they've been in. I still feel like this feels different enough. Like if you take like the Solero that we made with tequila, right? Both of these drinks sound super refreshing, but in totally different ways.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think that makes them really interesting and unique to put together on a menu. So
yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, we came up with some really cool stuff there. I think this is the longest episode we've had so far.
We keep saying that every time, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, by the end of season 3, we'll be at 3 hours. But you know, I think we've had some really good conversations about some of it today, so I don't mind it being a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you have it. That's our cocktails. Let us know in the comments which one was your favorite from our recipes, whether it's one of those classics or one of the 2 weird ones we made up again today. Again, two quite different drinks. We're continuing our theme of really managing to make 2 drastically different drinks out of very similar ingredients. So
this was way more interesting than I thought vodka was going to be initially.
Yeah, for sure. But we were worried about vodka not being interesting enough, and actually we came up with 2 like super unique drinks out of it.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool. Well, yeah, that's going to be it for this week then. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow us and rate us 5 stars on Spotify. We're going to keep bringing out these new episodes every Friday, at least as much as we can. Let us know in the comments about which recipe was your favourite and what we should name the annoying girl at the bar that's ordering all these weird drinks from us. Or if you have any other ideas for, like, you know, your own creations or name of our hypothetical bar, let us know. We want to hear from you guys. We want feedback. It's always good. You know what? Leave a hate comment. I don't care. Say, hey, I think you guys suck. You know what? That's fine. All right, you can do that.
I like a hater.
Yeah, listen, any attention's good attention. Am I right?
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening or watching.
Thanks, y'all.
And we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Take care.